right, and we're live. Or we should be anyway. We are live. I can see the preview is up, guys. The cameras are working. Audio should be fine. Please, if there are any technical difficulties, let me know. Get in touch with us on the chat. It is another episode, of course, of Bedouin Banter here on the podcast, guys. It's been a lonely one for the last couple of episodes, and I'm restarting since we've come back into this new series. A bunch of new series. It's series, right?
It's a collective of episodes, I'd like to think.
All right.
A free-flowing dialogue.
There you go.
Yes.
But I was asking about the plural of series.
Oh,
it's already...
Yes, here. I mean, it's ironic coming from the English major, but is it me?
Fair enough.
Let's just go with what you said.
All right, there we go, guys. It is Bedouins Up Close here on Bedouin Banter. So it's going to be kind of like the old school format where it's an interview, the old school Bedouin Banter, one-on-one, just me. And today I have a guest who's been on the show before, technically in a hidden episode,
Walla, 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 walla.
missing episode. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mike Donovan. Mike is not only a Navy boy, he's an adventurer. He's a man straight out of Hawaii. And he's been on the island for how long now?
I've been here about 2.5 years. I got here September 2017.
September 2017, that's right. Mike has also been a guy that's been a part of our improv group. He's been part of the local entertainment scene, doing improv, doing even some thespian work at one point or another, stagecraft, even tried his hand at stand-up one time. We're going to get him again another time.
We'll play it by ear. I have a tendency to be a little lazy, but...
Yes. Not when it's the party scene. Not when it's Adliyah, not when it's anything else.
True.
Mike, we were just talking about... basically in the improv crew. That was our collective consciousness kind of like kicking in all at the same time.
Yes.
Thinking about everything we've done up to this point now that we've actually have our shit together.
Hey, for once.
We do. We finally have, let's say, some documentation that we're breaking here for the first time on the podcast.
Oh my.
Yeah, we are. I wanted to spring this on you. Just
it's almost like it's been a year and a half in the making.
Let's say some bullshit legal contention that was never really a legal case
or
has
person.
been somebody was claiming, a bullshitter was claiming that he had a legal case against us when there was nothing in the courts, nothing in the public prosecution.
But boy, did people believe him.
Boy, did they believe him.
If you use big fancy words and are fucking annoying, man, will people listen.
It goes a long way on this island, right?
But fear not. The documents are in hand.
The documents are in hand. They're going to be here this week. So we just can officially say that legally we own the logo. That is it. We Hold My Kerek is officially ours in every sense. There was a period of about 2.5 months where it was in contention. So I submitted the logo. This is after everything, after all the claims, after all the bullshit. I submitted the logo as my own, as the one that my wife designed, Sheda. And we put it up
logo,
there.
By the way. Brilliant. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. At Hold My Kerek, Instagram.
That's the one.
We have some secret YouTube videos. See if you can find them. I doubt it.
But we'll get on that. I think we'll get on it. But we've come a long way, and now that we have the logo filed with the Ministry of Finance and Tourism and everything that basically falls under commerce. Nobody contested it. There was a period where it gets published in a journal for people to just literally go and say no.
Yes. It's a journal that's read by like 2 people. One of them is probably the one that,
Yeah. And I was waiting. I was like, okay, let's see. Is he going to contest? Is it? Nope, nothing. So we have claimed the logo. It is our Hold My Kerek, it's our CR. So you're going to be talking about that later on in another episode, though.
Goody.
We're going to make it improv specific.
The reunion tour,
yeah. But that's what I'm saying. It's ironic that we've come to this final conclusion. Where we're on board with the improv to be back to where we were before, after everything that's happened, even losing some people to circumstance, nothing more than just that. And you finally being available to actually practice and hang out.
Yeah. So what Khalid is referring to, so for a while, inherently when you're a sailor, you work on these floating metallic objects called ships.
In the Navy.
Yeah, it's a microcosm in itself, but I'm not here to talk about the Navy too much. But after you're done being on a ship for a while, sometimes you get to go to a desk job and your life gets normal. So I went from a period where literally once every 3 days at a minimum I had to be on the ship for 24 hours to now I work basically, I start my job at 8 a.m. and I go home at 4 p.m., sometimes earlier. And I don't have to do any overnight bullshit. And as soon as I get all this majestic free time, I literally left at the end of January, early February, take this wonderful vacation. I visit all these sites. I come back.
Everywhere in the world.
And the world as I know is changed.
COVID, Corona-chan.
As soon as I stepped off the airport, I mean, obviously, I pay attention to the news. I've been seeing, masks, people being like, well, like, NBC going, well, the COVID-19 virus has been spreading in the Wuhan city, and the death toll is at 200. And I was like, okay, no, MERS, SARS, bird flu, that was a couple hundred, all that jazz.
It's been happening.
And then I come back to Bahrain, a place that is not necessarily known for its abundance of caution.
No.
And I have to fill out a customs form. Like, literally, most of the time, they just see my ID card and I'm just waved into the country, like, no questions out. So I have to fill out a customs form. Then my temperature's scanned. Then I notice they're scanning everyone. Then everyone has masks. I'm like, what is going on? And then 2 weeks later, they just shut all down. Literally, the world is just like,
bye-bye.
Yeah.
Gone.
It was bad. When America's like, well, we're just going to turn off the economy. And they just pulled the switch.
But people were doubting it for a while, even in the States, everywhere around the world, except Bahrain, because Bahrain claims it was one of the fastest, based off of that South Korean model. There was a lot of people that were still, worried. They're like, what do we do? Do we actually close down borders? Do we actually do this? Do we, suspend flights? Do we start testing?
I think just the fact that Bahrain was testing and having people wear masks in February, that alone, made the transmission rate go down exponentially. If there's one thing that history has taught me is that Americans are horrendous when it comes to be told to do almost anything, especially when it's changes to their lives. Yeah. I mean,
thinking in advance, planning. But that's the thing though. Like if you compare it to let's say an analogy of a boat, sir, because you are in the Navy, right? Bahrain is like a PT boat, a small cruiser, right? You can quickly make decisions, especially the same with China because it's kind of an authoritarian state, right? You can quickly make decisions and say we're going in this direction. And things will turn. Yes. Right. But when you have the size and scope of a China with the U.S., but none of the ability to kind of say, all right, we're going left now.
There's a lot of middlemen, especially when when you have a government that gives out not necessarily orders, but follow this maybe. Yeah. And the country is basically set up where it's 50 mini countries that are unified under one system. Yeah. With their own heads of state, which are called governors, for those that don't know. The response is, I'm sure people have noticed, was very patchwork. You had states like California that just shut down everything. And then you had places like Florida that was like, maybe it's not too bad. Yeah.
But there was no policy in place for this to be a federal decision ever at any point, even with the CDC. It was always every state kind of takes its own decision, its own caution.
There was guidelines. A lot of the medical stuff in the United States is handled at the state and local level. Because specifically the federal government, it's my civics class coming back to me. I believe it's the 10th Amendment that says if the federal government isn't expressly given a power in writing, then it falls to the states. Yeah. So that's why you have education, for example, is so different in every single state, even though there is a Department of Education that
oversees the whole thing.
Exactly. But each state, if you go to Mississippi or Alabama in public schools, the quality of education you're going to get is going to vastly different than, say, New York, Pennsylvania, or Maryland. Right. I'll tell you why. Because a lot of those states fund education with income property taxes. Bonkers. So if your housing is a lot more expensive, this is someone that, so you guys have some background. Grew up in a military family. I spent a lot of years in Hawaii, off and on, about 10 or 11. So that's why I say I'm from there. Yeah. But, I've lived in Florida. I lived in Maryland, Virginia. I lived overseas in Italy and now here in California, too. And I went to public school in Hawaii and I went to public school in Maryland. I did high school in Hawaii, high school in Maryland. Right. Huge difference. I went from a school that was 50 years old in Hawaii, 9th and 10th grade. And then I went to a school that was brand spanking new. Several $1 million to build, all the best facilities, great technology, smart boards, all that shit. Wow, okay. So the property taxes, I mean, it makes a difference. Yeah. So that's why, going back to COVID, that's why you see the response was so different, because the president he can give out national guidelines and he can close federal things within a state. So, like things like the National Park Service, that's not owned by the state. That's controlled and run by the Department of the Interior, which is part of the federal government. So, for states that have giant national forests like California, you can close those down. Like legally, the president's
because they own that territory in that sense.
Exactly.
So here's a question though: like any kind of sweeping legislation that comes down, let's say like curfew or something else, that can't necessarily come from the president's office or that arm of the government. It has to come from Congress, right? That's the only way it can supersede the states.
Yes and no. Ideally, sweeping legislation comes from Congress. The president can.
He can stop your funding. He can be like, hey, you know what? You want some of this FEMA money? Go fuck yourself. You're not getting this.
Well, so that's the thing too. So normally, yes. So normally, this is the fucked up situation America's in. So there has never been a precedence where the president right now is pushing for states to open their economies.
Right.
And every single state has declared a state of emergency. When a state declares a state of emergency, that waves a red flag to the federal government to open up federal emergency funding for that state. However, there are certain cases where if a state complies with the federal law, then they get funding. So the drinking age, for example, everyone wonders, like, up until the 1980s, the drinking age was, for the most part, 18. Some states had 19, some states had 20. However, when they made the law to have it 21, the government did a loophole. They said, "Hey, if you comply with this law and make your individual state's drinking age 21, that will open up federal highway funding."
Right.
And so the states were like, "Damn, shit, we need that."
Yeah, we need that.
However, the reverse, I think, might possibly happen. There has never been a precedence where the federal government has restricted funding or basically not done legislation in favor of a state for a state being too strict with laws regarding a quarantine. So you might have this instance where, which is you're seeing, the president is wanting states to open up. It's almost as if which, mind you, for our listeners, the president is, the head of the executive branch, but he's not a summation of the federal government.
Exactly, yeah.
Not to get into civics too much, but I mean, if we had a separate episode, basically the president over the last 240 years has kind of secured more and more power.
Expanding abilities, from like how you declare what is a war, what isn't a war, stuff like that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Personally, I think if the founding fathers were alive today, they would be rolling in their grave. Because what you don't see...
Bold statement on this podcast that you can never take back, Mike.
I know. It's in the cloud forever.
Yeah.
By the way, my views are my views only and do not expressly represent the Navy or the government. Just throwing that out there. Ding. TM. But I think what we're going to see is this weird dichotomy where the states are being pressured by the president and the executive branch, mostly the president's office, to open up. And I think the president is going to try doing something shady where he restricts funding for a state for being too cautious.
Yeah. But that's what all of them do anyway. These back and forth, tit for tat, kind of games.
Exactly. Yeah. But the president, there was a CNN interview a couple days ago, and he was saying something that he had absolute power over the governors, that he could order them to open up the country, which is not true. That's what the 10th Amendment is for. And knowing Trump, I have a feeling that if he were to do something like that, it would definitely be challenged, and it would most likely be found unconstitutional.
Yeah. It would still have to go through Congress, even if you had to do something at that scale, right?
Not necessarily. So the president goes through Congress to enact legislation. Yeah. But there's certain executive orders that he can issue without going through Congress.
Is that like what is that one called? The one where you can forcibly tell companies to produce something in a time of war? Or
That's the War Times Power Act. So that was a law that Congress did pass way back in the day in the 1900s. That gave the president that power. Yeah. They gave the country that power. So now that is a law that is constitutional because the Congress, is brought up in the House of Representatives and then ratified by the Senate, the president now has that power.
Do you not think that this would be the perfect time to use a power like that? You feel like it's just too controversial? Just from the let's say respirators.
No, it's not. It's not. In fact, several companies like GE have been and Ford have been manufacturing respirators and masks with their.
But that's out of their own. They've kind of volunteered
under their own initiative.
We're assuming there are no favors being traded under the table as well. But let's assume.
Well, I mean, So, well, I guess this is turning more into a discussion of politics than the military.
I know. Okay. Well, we're going into this.
Oh no, and I'm 100% fine with that. Yeah. So, I don't think it would be a bad thing if I don't think it would be as controversial as people think it would be if the president did do that. I think for whatever reason, and I'd have to do more research, but for whatever reason, he's being cautious on that end because he thinks that just the normal manufacturers can keep up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That and shit. Yeah, I guess that is it. I thought I had another point, but
fair enough.
That's it.
I was gonna ask you about something else anyway. I wanted to get off this topic because it was getting too. It's too, like you said, it's getting into this mire of what politics is in the States. It's a lot of that, but we already get a ton of that coverage anyway. That's what most people are talking about anyway. Mm-hmm. What I want to know is, when coming from the perspective of somebody in the Navy, and you're here out here in Bahrain, you're out here in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
What has been the kind of like the concern with, let's say, China? Like for example, I don't know if you can disclose this, but in internal memos, do you guys call it the Wuhan virus, or have you also submitted to calling it COVID?
It is referred to as COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Any correspondence that I've seen, it's always COVID-19.
All right. Okay. There you go.
I think while in history we have had viruses that maybe were, referred to by region, the Spanish influenza, for example. It didn't originate there. It was just called that because so many people caught it in Spain.
Yeah, but there's also been a geographical kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Precedent with a lot of these viruses, like Ebola is a river, I think at some point, West Nile virus. Mm. A lot of them are location based. It was not like if you called it, let's say, the China virus, all right, then you're maybe being a dick. You're specifically trying to point out that it's China.
Oh, well, yeah, that's basically what I shouldn't even say the government, what one individual that happens to have, unfortunately, a lot of power decided to do.
Yeah.
But, that...
So there was never at any point a kind of a shift over... All
right. No, it was just... We call it what the scientists say, and that's, right. Coronavirus, COVID-19... Okay. Rona,
The Rona is
Rona,
the one I appreciate.
And it's what it is, It's just it's like when SARS and MERS and bird flu was a thing, we didn't call Chinese bird flu, Chinese SARS.
Yeah, but MERS is still Middle East respiratory. You have the name of the location in there. It's the Middle East.
True.
Like I don't know about SARS. I don't remember what that stands for. But if I had to guess, it was something like.
I could have sworn SARS came out of China.
Shanghai Avian Respiratory Syndrome.
Yeah, something like
I don't
that.
know. Maybe. I'm assuming.
The Google machine might be able to tell us.
If we had the third guy here, but unfortunately he's not here. He's going to Google it for us. You guys can help us out in chat. All right, Mike, off the topic of Corona-chan.
Yes.
We have some questions. What do you think about Michigan? No, I'm not going to talk about Michigan, Dina. Go away. This is my sister.
About who?
Michigan's demonstrations against the government.
Oh, Dina's listening. Hey,
yeah,
what's up?
She is. What's up, Dindoon?
It's been a minute. How you doing? Good to see you.
Mike's not from Michigan. I don't want him to comment on what Michigan does.
I've never actually been to Michigan.
There you go.
I know a few people from Michigan. Specifically, for our listeners, Michigan's actually broken up into two parts. You have the part that looks like an oven mitt, which is Michigan.
Yeah.
And then you have the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which looks like a jagged, fucked up lightning bolt. But it's
like the rest of Canada.
Exactly. It's big enough to be its own state. It's way bigger than Rhode Island, Connecticut, but it's just the part 2 of Michigan that's
that nobody talks about.
Physically separated. It's like a lot more country, and people love their guns, and Milwaukee's best,
Yeah, for true that.
Sponsorship.
There you go. Johnny Doe has just given us the answer. It's South Asian respiratory virus.
Oh, okay, thanks, Johnny.
Thank you, Johnny. There's a lot of unusual stuff happening. You know what concerns me in the Navy, and especially because you guys are stationed here, and you're one of the few people that, you come from this Navy background, but you also interact with the local crowd and people here. You get out, you do shows with us, you have fun. There are parties, there's all kinds of stuff. You're really connected, especially if you guys see his Instagram. Check it out.
I'm deep. I'm too deep.
He's this is why I call him the Lawrence of Adliyah, or this is a new one for me, of Arabia, because he does embed into the local culture and the people. He wants to get to know people, and he's gotten around. His name has been floated out there as a legend, a myth, a unicorn at Calexico at one point.
I'm just a dude that knows how to talk to people. Doesn't matter where they come from. Doesn't matter their religion.
Well, that's let's say not necessarily the most common thing you find with Navy personnel. People are usually cautious.
I agree.
They're usually cautious with good intent.
Oh God, the training they give us is hysterical. Like I remember back in January where like the whole Iraq Iranian tensions like flared up. In part because we kind of like sucker punched Iran and killed their general. Man, like the emails I would get every day, it's like, well, you can go out, but like don't. Yeah. But if you do, just be careful.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just going to Adliyah, man. Like, chill. They're just like, whoa, just relax. And then their rumor mill, they're just like, you can only go between your apartment and work. And I was like, why? And they're just
that. I love Navy people because there's, like I said, the flip side. I love the ones that are overly like secure and paranoid. And
it baffles me. Just there are people that have been here longer than I have, and they've never even been to like the souk, man. No. And I'm just like, what do you do all day? Like, shit, I'm having such a hard time with just being in my apartment and just stuck with Netflix. There are people that spend years here. That's all they do.
Even the recent thing, the crisis and everything. I know people that are supposed to be out of rotation. They're supposed to be going back home. They can't see their kids, their family. They're stuck here.
Yeah.
So they don't have a connection to the local scene or anybody here, and they feel alone, and that has its toll on people.
100%. I remember I was good for the first 2 weeks, and then just so our listeners know, I'm a very like outgoing person. I have a hard time physically sitting still, as Khalid and members of the troop will tell you. And I was good for about 2 weeks, and then I remember I was just sitting in my apartment for like the first time in my entirety of being here. I was in my apartment like from Thursday until like Saturday, and then I went to work on Sunday. My mom texted me, she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No,
I'm dying.
I'm not."
Lord Jesus, help me.
I've had multiple people not ask me how I'm doing, and they're like, "Oh, they want to know if I have corona." Cool, and I don't. And they're like, "No, how are you doing?" Like, emotionally.
Does this make me a terrible person, by the way? Because I feel for you. I really do.
No,
right?
It's
but
a sign that we're friends. I do.
You
know me.
I know, and in that sense, I really do kind of like relate to a lot of people that are in your same circumstance. But I was asking Shedley the other day. I was like, "Am I a dick?" Because I don't feel any different. Like, for me, I'm like doing the same shit I was doing before.
I think it's like you have a lot of hobbies that don't require people per se.
No, I'm not. It's funny because people like me and like to hang out with me.
Oh yeah.
I, on the other hand, get like I'm an introvert. I can't handle too much people at any given time.
True. I wouldn't call you an introvert. Maybe you are,
but think of it. Like, don't I get overloaded and then I just dip out?
Well, I think that's just like as we mature and get older, we're just like, man, fuck these people, these youth. Get off my emotional lawn,
I've never thought I'd hear you say that sentence, like as we mature and get older.
Right.
And then 5 minutes later you're talking about ass.
I feel like the only difference between like my younger self and my current self is I just have more money, which means I can make more reckless decisions. Anyone that's ever seen me drink a Calexico,
these guys get so much money, by the way, in the Navy. I'm just putting that out there.
Well,
you guys don't understand. They support our economy. I'm so happy that you guys do. Don't get me wrong.
I'm going to put a very large asterisk on that. Is me getting technical for a sec. As an officer, we are paid well.
Yeah.
So we don't pay any federal taxes. That's not just for officers. That's for everyone.
Do you guys pay state?
If if you're from a state that has state tax, yes. If you're a resident of Florida, like your boy,
no state income tax there. I like that.
So if you play the system right, so a lot of people in my line of work are residents of like Pennsylvania and Florida and Delaware.
That explains, Jacksonville. That explains a lot there.
Yeah. Well, they have the big. There's
Navy
a big
base.
base? Yeah, it's a naval base for training pilots, like helicopter pilots, jet pilots. But I will say, and I don't know if there are any military listeners there. The amount that we pay the junior enlisted sailors, to be honest, is fucking atrocious.
Really?
Well, yeah. So like, if you took a brand new sailor, a seaman, petty officer, third class, one of those types.
Explain that to people. What does that mean? Like equivalent?
So a petty officer, third class would be the same as a corporal.
Okay, that doesn't explain it to the average person. Like, what are their roles, tasks, responsibilities?
Yeah. So how it works is like in the military, you have the officers. They're more of the leadership, management, administrative paperwork.
Yeah.
In my community, I drive ships. I'm called a surface warfare officer. So the officers are the ones that are like the experts. Like navigation. We're the ones that direct the ship's evolutions and movements. We plan like training exercises, working with other navies, gun shoots, like big picture evolutions. We are the final say in terms of safety, in terms of execution, timing, management, all that stuff.
Okay,
and we also provide leadership. We provide guidance from our level. Like there are decisions that I make that, I've been in charge of as many people. My last ship, it was about 26. And on this ship, which is much smaller, I was in charge of about 8 or 9 people.
Okay, so you do have some responsibilities and tasks at that level, is what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So
and these junior officers you're talking about, what kind of responsibilities? How many people are they?
So I am considered a junior officer.
Okay.
The people I'm referring to, so the actual the worker, I guess the worker bees is the best analogy. They're the sailors. So they're the your seamen, your petty officers. They are the enlisted, meaning that they are technical experts. They're the guys that, for example, an officer isn't going to fix an engine, but a machinist mate who is a petty officer, he knows the technical skill because he's been to the courses and he has the hands-on experience to fix the engine. Right. Now the officer who is the engineer, he will know what the issue is. He will order the parts, work with the supply system to get what the sailors need to install in the engine to fix it. Right. He'll be the one that briefs the boss, the commanding officer, aka the captain of the ship. He'll be like, hey, this is the impact of having this down. This is the plan forward. But your sailors and your petty officers, they're not going to be the ones that go directly to the captain and tell him what the way is ahead. Okay. And that being said, it's
so they don't get paid that well. You're saying they're not, considering the amount of time and effort.
The more it's a rank structure. So you start off when someone enlists in the Navy, they start off as a seaman. Yeah. There's 3 different levels. So
can you get that mic closer to you if you can?
Sure. Yeah. Is this better?
Just pull it forward. Yeah. Get that there.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's a bit better there.
That's what she said. All right. So you start off. So there's 9 different enlisted ranks. Guess we're doing a little military lesson here. So you start off as a seaman recruit, then you go to seaman apprentice, seaman, petty officer 3rd class, petty officer 2nd class, petty officer 1st class, chief petty officer, senior chief petty officer, master chief petty officer. The chiefs, so that's the 7th enlisted rank and above, so 7th through 9th. They are the technical experts. They are the guys that know the engine inside and out. They know all the tricks and the trades. They are the guys that work with the junior officers. That's which I'll explain in a sec. They work with the junior officers. They run the day-to-day evolutions for the junior guys, the petty officers and the seamen, to make sure that the tasking that is put out by the officers, the mid-level management like myself, gets executed.
Right.
And then the chiefs with the officers, mostly the officers though, we're the ones that are if the captain gives us guidance as to how to conduct business, ways to improve upon efficiencies, areas that need to be addressed immediately, the captain helps the officers prioritize. But as a mid-level officer, I also have a lot of autonomy. So even I've had 2 bosses on the smaller ship. One was one I had a difficult relationship with, but he taught me a lot just about actually maneuvering the ship and operating it at sea.
Right.
And the other one was a lot more relaxed and kind of let me do my thing. But both of those bosses, they wouldn't be the ones that would be telling the machinist mate hey, you need to fix this part of the engine right now. All right, they would tell me that, and then I would have to relay that down to them.
Okay, all right.
So there's levels.
There's levels to it. There's a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of intricacy to it, and there's different roles that kind of overlap in that sense.
Exactly, and the smaller the ship or command, if you will, the smaller the command, everyone there multitasking is life. On these the ships we work on here are very small. They're only 55 meters long. Crews of anywhere from 26 to 32 people. Your average U.S. warship, like a destroyer, is almost 200 meters long, has 350 people. An aircraft carrier is 5,000 people.
And let's assume here we go with this one. There's a lot of technical background involved in a lot of the work involved as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that are technically trained to do some really intense stuff. That means the education level varies a lot as well, is what I'm assuming here?
Yeah, so to be an officer, you need a college degree. Okay. To be enlisted, you do not. However, as an enlisted person, you can earn a college degree over time, or you can go back to school.
Okay.
So there's nothing hindering an enlisted person from getting a degree. It's just you need to.
Is that like ROTC programs and stuff like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So so there's several different ways you can become an officer. So I went to the Naval Academy, which is in Annapolis, Maryland, and it's a 4-year program. Didn't pay any tuition. It's like a scholarship. Basically, you get a free education. This is weird dichotomy because it's a 4-year university, but it's also like a full-time military school.
Right.
So most people in between their college years they get 3 months off. Me, I would get 1 month off if I was lucky, and then I would have to do training for 2 months. So I would either go to the fleets, as they call it, like I would be temporarily assigned to an actual warship. I would...
so kind of like Wesley Crusher in Star Trek. He's like an ensign. He's going out there enjoying himself, and then he goes back to school.
Exactly, yeah. Right, okay. So it's basically, it's like, and the college experience, it was a mix of... So I was actually an English major at the Naval Academy, but...
is that a common thing, by the way, or not really? Like, what kind of backgrounds are we talking about?
So the Naval Academy is great. It teaches... things I never thought I would say. But they, major-wise, it's everything from the humanities, English, Arabic... political science, economics, and then they have the technical majors, math, science, physics, chemistry,
engineering, all this stuff,
electrical engineering, thermodynamics. I mean, they got all types of stuff. So the academy wants to have it's like 65% be what's called STEM majors, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But there are a decent amount of people that go there. And it's a small school. It's only... each class is about 1,000, 1,200 tops. So there's about 4,400, 4,500 students total.
Right.
That being said, the academic facilities are great. Plenty of money and funding.
But is there like a different focus when it comes to the English lit or the humanities? Is it, because you assume that you guys would be reading more about, I don't know, give me like military history. You'd be reading more about literature that's relevant.
So there's there are mandatory classes we have to take. So when I was a freshman, I took American Naval History. That was like a mandatory history class we had to take. And everyone, regardless if you're an engineer or a Arabic major, you have to take 2 semesters of English. But the books that we read, I mean, it was everything from Frankenstein, A Prayer for Owen Meany.
Okay.
You're reading.
So it's diverse. It's not like built to configure you to a certain mindset.
Exactly. And while we're there, we already have to take. I mean, even though I was an English major, so like when I was a senior, 2 out of my classes of my 6 classes that I was taking would be English. I had 1 elective, which I chose to focus on like Middle Eastern history, and then the rest of the classes were all mandatory. So I was still taking naval ethics, law, leadership, navigation 2.
So this is all on top of
thermodynamics, physics, science, chemistry, calculus. Not just like 1 semester; they were all like 2 or 3 semesters of each of those.
But now the focus on Middle Eastern history, was that specifically you chose that path, or is that something that's more common considering you want to go towards, how if you take a certain course, you're much more likely to get a specific assignment, much more likely to get a, specific promotion. Is there
so the nice thing about the Naval Academy is you're guaranteed a job if you graduate. Like literally you're guaranteed a job.
Yeah.
So
and that's where the big money is as well, right? When you're an officer like that.
Well, yeah. So officers definitely initially make a lot more than like a seaman versus an ensign, which is in the Navy, the first grade of officer. It's a huge pay difference.
There you go. So you come out of it, you're guaranteed a job, you're guaranteed good income, you're guaranteed a good education. So where does, like you were saying, the heading, is it natural to go towards that Middle Eastern studies kind of direction, or was that your choice specifically?
So when I say Middle Eastern studies direction, so there isn't, and I told the faculty there, because I knew a lot of people like that were in the history and the poli-sci departments, because I took classes with them. I told them, I said, there really should have been like a Middle Eastern like studies major, because if there was that, I probably would have picked it. This is how I got interested into it. So there's 2 history classes you have to take at the Naval Academy. One is American Naval History, which makes sense. Yeah. You learn about all the battles of old, commanders, etc. That's like a freshman level class. You just got to take it, do your thing. Yeah. And then when you are a sophomore, you have to take 1 more history class. And then it could be, or maybe 2, I forget. But you had 3 options. You could do history of the Western world, history of like the ancient Middle East or the modern Middle East. It starts off
modern
ancient.
Or like
it starts off ancient, like Byzantine, Mesopotamia, all that shit.
Okay.
Eventually it like goes.
So not antiquity then. You're talking about post Roman Empire.
It goes a little bit of antiquity, but it's a very like it's a semester. It's a very surface level course.
Right.
Like,
okay.
Broad swath, but not big swath, but maybe an inch deep. Or
right.
A couple centimeters, whatever the conversion is. And metric.
That's what she said. There you
right?
go.
And then the other option was like, history of like Asia, like modern Asia.
Okay.
And I picked the history of the Middle East. I was like, I don't know much about this region. This was back in like 2000.
Was there a calling? Were you hearing something in the wind?
Well, the Marvel origin story is getting there. But so, after I heard the
was there like a dusky-looking old man that was in the library that told you, Donovan, you must read this book?
Well, there's a minaret in the center of the campus. Naval Academy. I just, I heard the man issuing, I forget what it is in Arabic, the call to learn, if you will. Take this class.
And then your journey started. This is like the start of Gremlins. You had a little bit of a moment where he was urging you to come here and talk.
Well, I'll tell you why. So I had the perfect teacher for it. So I remember it was this guy. His name was Jeffrey Makris. Jeff Makris. He was a Navy captain, which is a very high rank. A lot more than what I was. I was a lowly midshipman, which is like a naval student. And this is a guy. He was like a foreign area officer that became a full-time instructor. And he was telling me all these stories about, his travels to Saudi Arabia and, Qatar and Bahrain and just he knew all these diplomats. He got gifts of like, gold watches from like this king and like Jordan or something. So this guy had been all over. And he really made the region come alive. It was fun.
So he was telling you these stories. Like, what was the craziest one? The Kuwaitis with tigers? What was your craziest story? Come on.
Well, I forget all the stories he told, but it was the way he taught it. He was passionate about it. He made the region come alive.
Okay.
And I coincidentally I happened to validate 2 semesters of Spanish when I came into college, and so because I validated those 2 semesters, that was 6 credits. That freed up my matrix a little bit, just enough so that every semester, starting my sophomore year, I could take like a random elective of my choice, because you needed a minimum of 15 credits every semester. And so I started taking like Middle Eastern stuff. So
you were leaning naturally towards that yourself.
Well, that, and after, especially after I took that history course, I was like, oh, this region's really cool. Let me take more. So I started, my junior year, because I was only able to take one Middle Eastern history elective my sophomore year. Starting my junior year, I really got into it. So I took, politics of the Middle East, which was taught by, again, most of the faculty at the academy, it's about 2/3 are civilians. Yeah. And the other third are like naval instructors. Some are permanent professors, and others are kind of rotating. They'll be there for 3 or 4 years, teach, and then they go back to a ship or a submarine or like a plane. Like a helicopter squadron. Right. And so, I took politics of the Middle East, which I still have a great reference book. It's like 1,000 pages long, goes over everything. If you ever want to know about like the Tunisian judicial system, don't.
Mike is the guy to talk to when it comes to, because he will surprise people. He will surprise people.
I have the book that talks about it.
Because this is the interesting part, because you people from my part of the world would assume that there's this like natural inclination built within the military, built within the Navy, to kind of steer you towards certain things. It's like, oh, learn Farsi, do this. But really, they're not shaping your mind in any specific direction that is Middle East centric.
Well, so part of my curiosity, because I grew up, like I remember when I was 10, and I was living in Italy at the time, and I was watching on CNN us invading Baghdad.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really like I knew from a young age like who Saddam Hussein was, but I kind of almost wish I could go back to that time just to pay attention a little bit more, because when you're a 10-year-old, your priorities, you want to play you want to play PS2 and hang out with the boys, like the 5th graders, and just chill. And you're not really paying attention as much nearly to the world around you. And my father, great guy, much more conservative than I am, Navy guy through and through. So he, growing up, you're exposed to stereotypes of the region,
right?
And part of my curiosity was I just didn't really know much about that part of the world, like nothing other than what I'd seen in some news clippings, and I remember like the one Arab guy that I knew like growing up. Barely.
Where in Maryland or Hawaii?
No, it was in Virginia. It was a guy named Zubair, who I think was from Afghanistan.
Okay.
And,
I like how you said that, Afghanistan.
Yeah. Right?
You gave it a little bit of like it. In Bahrain,
Afghan.
Khazai, you say it like you say Hawaii. Hawaii. Khazai. That's the other one.
That's true. So speaking of, pronunciations I've learned in America, we're atrocious at pronouncing things.
No,
like,
you're not. You're fine.
We literally call like one of our superstars. It should be Khalid, but we say, oh, that's Khalid. Just
but that's the thing. There's an American. I know, but now I can't say that anymore. There's an American precedent where there's a lot too many people that are called Khalid. Like the singers, the DJs.
Honestly, I didn't even know how to pronounce like Iran properly until I think I was almost done with high school. But I mean, it makes sense. America is so large.
Yeah.
It is easy to live your entire life without actually going outside of America. I mean, it's like bigger than like Europe and some continents.
Right. Yeah.
And there's parts of the country I haven't even been to. Which growing up in a Navy family, like, we never had reason to go to like North Dakota, for example, or Iowa.
This is the interesting part because you didn't get to go a lot around in the States itself, but you did get to visit a lot of the outer world, right?
So
the world abroad, but
I did a decent amount of travel in the States, but you got to remember it was mostly on the coast because Navy.
Now, this is what I was going to ask you. Now, is it typical that you would be as is it a Hawaii thing? Is it a Virginia thing or were you just your family because of the nature of you being in a military family that you would be much more accepting of learning about other cultures? Because there's the two types of Navy people. I call them the Star Trek people. So they're the ones that are the nerds and everything. And they have that Star Trek mentality of I want to learn about this alien race called Bahrainis. I want to know what they tick like. How do they mate? How do they drink? And then there's the other type, which is like I'm going to be here. I'm going to do my years. I'm going to go back. Like they insulate.
So yeah, some people come out to Bahrain for financial purposes. Because when you're not paying taxes, you do make some money. But a lot of people, especially when they come out here, I think it's a mix of like they're uncomfortable, but they're also a lot of people don't go out and explore just because here more than anywhere else, I would argue, like maybe with the exception of like the ships in Japan. If you're on a ship out here, you're working your ass off. Yeah. And a lot of people, honestly, at the end of the day, are just fucking tired.
They're tired, yeah.
Like,
I've seen that.
I've
seen that, yeah.
I mean, shit, you would see me. Like, I'd roll into practice on like 3 hours
you guys
of sleep.
Are like caffeine pills.
Pop a caffeine pill, which not the healthiest way of doing it, but part of the reason I was able to get out so much, it was twofold. One, my personality. Not everyone kind of has this like effervescent like drive where like you can't sit still and like you just have to be doing anything.
Yeah. Call
it ADHD, maybe who the fuck knows.
Yeah.
But I would literally sometimes, especially because my first 21 months on the ship I was on, I'm not going to name it, but for those that know me, they know what it is. Were extremely stressful because I worked for someone that made my life a little more difficult than they needed to.
Yeah.
And so part of my stress relief was to go out, to interact with people, to do things like improv. And, I honestly think that if I didn't have those outlets, I would have had, I don't know, I might have snapped, man. Like
No, fair enough.
It wasn't always fun and games.
I know people that do that for other things, like the other hobbies that I'm into, whether it's miniature wargaming or, even some of the other guys that play in, let's say, the nerdy communities. Like the trading cards, right? There's a lot of Americans that come in to play Magic the Gathering.
Oh, yeah.
And they're buff bastards. Like, they're huge. And some of them are, like, nerdy. And it doesn't matter. But the point is that you can get the sense that they compartmentalize. Like, I don't talk about that. When I'm here, I'm this guy. I'm this person. I'm Matt. I'm John.
Because for our jobs, it's like when, unlike a lot of people where you can go to work and then you don't have to take work home with you. Especially when you're on a ship. If you go to sea, like you live where you work. You know, like your bed, your rack, as we call them, Navy term. Is like maybe 20 meters away from like your workspace.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
So that's a different life. You put it behind you and you go outside. And when you do interact with these people that are in the island in Bahrain as a serviceman, you tell yourself that you are too worried about the consequences of mixing things together, or you're just like, I'm not here for long enough anyway. Might as well just not get too attached.
It's just like a lot of people, when they, and I kind of fall into this mentality. Like when I'm outside of work, I don't want to be reminded of work. So I'm a rarity. I have more Arab and local friends that are like Bahraini than I do like military friends that I hang out with outside of work.
Yeah.
I do have some of my closest friends are in the military, Navy and Marine Corps. And, I'd be more than happy to hang out with them outside of work. But military people, because it's more than a job. It is in many ways, especially for the ships and submarine guys. Such a lifestyle. Like literally, you live where you work. Like when you go to sea, like it's you. and the 27 other people on your small little ship. Like, there's no fire department. If something breaks, you got to fix it. If there's a fire, fire department's not going to come. Like, you gotta put it out yourself.
But what I'm asking about is like, fair enough. There's a lot of people that I know, whether they're in Bahrain or from the States, it doesn't matter, that don't want to talk about work when they're outside of work, right? But the phenomenon I'm talking about is people that come in and they'll pretend like they're geologists or, like, well, dude, you're not a geologist. Come on. Like,
I think some people do stupid shit like that because like they think they're like, oh, like we're not allowed to tell these Arabs what we do, even though it's so obvious.
But he's got the Semper Fi tattoo. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man.
That's just the mix of like. Unfortunately, when it comes to military training, there's a very bad tendency to like. The military acknowledges that like the terrorists can be creative, but they're like. They never mention that, like, the civilians and other people you interact with who are locals that aren't, in the military, have critical thinking abilities.
Yeah.
And, we as service members have a very bad habit of sticking out. Like, we work hard, but we play much harder. So, you have a lot of, you get a Jafar on any pre-COVID night, at like 11 p.m. and there's sailors, Marines, getting drunk, having a good time, blowing off.
But
steam.
There's a few exceptional ones, I'm going to say, that are, I'll call them social butterflies like yourself, and they have the ability to kind of, like, they don't seem as obviously military in that sense.
Yeah.
And it's like you. It's like they might have an unusual background. Maybe they're English lits, or they go into the, they're not there for necessarily the bars or the hookers or the clubbing. You're part of the clubbing scene for sure, but you're also part of the, let's say, the theater clubs.
Yeah.
You joined improv. You did this stuff. So that was part of your inclination from back home, what you did when you were back home. What did you feel like was the reason to do that now and here? Were you curious? Because you walked into our room, dude.
Oh yeah.
You came in first day and you're like, "Hey, I'm here. I'm from this. I've done improv."
So what Khalid is referring to? So I'm proud to say Khalid is what I would call my first friend in Bahrain.
Right, like a Vulcan.
So I met him literally my 6th day here, and I went to the British Club because they were doing improv sessions, improv practices at the time, and just because you're in a new location. You're still gonna have the same hobbies. Like when people, like if I was really into tennis, like I would have found people in Bahrain that are into tennis. I'm sure it's a thing. I don't know because I don't really give a shit about tennis. But it's the same thing. Like before I came here, I was a huge theater buff, theater nerd, and really into improv. And in high school and college, I did performing arts and like plays and musicals and like one act festivals, all that shit. However, once I was done with college, I became on the ship. I started shifting to improv because dedicating like 8 solid weeks to like rehearsals and practices.
Yeah.
Because the thing is,
it's
like,
a nightmare, isn't it?
Unlike an office building, when you're on a ship, like you leave the country all the time. You go to sea, and when you go to sea, you're at sea. You are in your little, however big the ship is, your metallic structure, and you live, work, and breathe and play in there.
Yeah, and your state of readiness, your shifts, your timetables are constantly adjusting.
Exactly. So when I was in Hawaii, that's where I was on my first ship. I shifted to improv because unlike a play, you can do shows really without practicing. It's all made up. That's the nature of improv.
Yeah.
So when I left Hawaii in April of 2017. I still wanted to get better at improv. I still wanted to do it. So I did a couple months of training in Virginia before I came out to Bahrain. And, I found an improv troupe out there, Push Comedy Theater. Shout out to you guys. Great troupe. Check them out. But I took classes with the Push Comedy Theater because I was there in Virginia for so long. And, I had some great teachers there, and they taught me a lot of things, mostly long form focused, but skills that I was able to bring to Bahrain. And then one of my hobbies, just since I was late high school, was going to see actual plays. So when I go to anywhere, whether it be for vacation or to move there, I research, and I did research. So I knew about the Manama Theater Club months before I got here.
Oh, so you've been reading about it online?
I looked it up a couple months before I arrived, so I knew. I was like, hey, like one of the first things, like once I get settled and kind of figure out like the day-to-day workflow and just kind of like getting my basic ways around the city. Was I was gonna hop in an Uber and go to one of these practices. So,
just as a question,
Yeah.
theoretically speaking here, I'm going to drop the theoretically part. I'm going to go straight into something else.
Yeah, sure.
How do we compare? Like scope, size, capability, talent, dedication, creativity, originality, commitment to this per capita, same places.
Improv or just in general?
In general, because you've been a part now, if I'm going to explain to everybody, you've been a part now of many different scenes. Even if you're not actively working alongside them, you've seen them operate. You've seen people that are doing the shows, the event cycles, the bohemian crowd, the theater crowd, name it, and you've seen it, right?
Yeah,
you've seen the stand-up as well.
Agreed. Yeah.
Where do you feel like Bahrain lists as far as the rest of the world?
I think Bahrain is so Bahrain, by the nature of being so small, it is much easier for creatives to kind of find each other and know each other through the sea of people. Like the fact that one of my very good friends happened to be on the radio for so long, and I could hear him on the national fucking radio. In America that's not a thing.
Really? You don't get the local RJs or...
Well, you do, but Bahrain in many ways is like a giant small town.
Yeah.
So it's easy to if you want to find the creatives, the actors, the improvisers, the artists,
they stick out.
The singers, it's easy. People know people. You get friends with 2 people, suddenly you know 10 people. I think a lot of the drive and good ideas and passion are there. I think Bahrain is a bad issue with being a little apathetic, though. And what I mean is there's a lot of good ideas floating around, but not a lot of people actually take the time to follow through. And I think that's the biggest difference between here and the States. Because in the States, you'll have people that are just as talented, or maybe even less talented than people in Bahrain, depending on where you are. Because, obviously, the cities are going to have more talent.
But that's the nature of them being a magnet as well. So I'm not going to compare them to, let's say, a city. I've had people say that to me before. They're like, yeah, but don't compare us to New York and LA and stuff. I'm like, yeah.
No,
but,
I wasn't even going to bring those up. But it's
but you know what I mean.
People in America, inherently, have a tendency to follow, especially the creatives. They follow through a little bit more. They're like, I'm going to make this poem and perform it with bongos. And they do it. As opposed to here, where they'd be like, "Oh yeah, baby, we need to do this bongos," and everyone's like, "Yeah," and then 3 weeks later, it's like, "All right, who's written it?" And everyone's like, "No."
I love the.
No.
I'm just loving the character you chose to express that.
Oh,
that
yeah,
idea.
Yeah. For the one person in the room that knows it, being Khalid, he knows what I'm referencing.
Right, okay.
We've known each other a long time. But
it's a good choice that you took poetry there, because you feel like something like poetry would be maybe one of the simplest things to kind of execute. You don't need a lot. You don't need a lot.
Oh yeah.
It's what you write and what you express.
Surprised me. Also, one of the biggest differences is that in Bahrain.
Get that mic closer again.
Sorry, my bad. This better.
Yeah, just pull it forward to you as well.
Yeah. So in Bahrain, it's
there you go.
Yeah, it's good. Banter.
Yeah, you were saying then, considering the its low bar of entry, you don't need a lot to actually perform with a poem.
Well, it's people lose like the States, people lose interest quickly in certain new things. But what surprised me is how little a lot of your average Bahraini citizen was exposed to certain art forms. So so many people, especially when we were doing improv, one of our biggest challenges was telling people what the fuck improv is.
Yeah.
So many people thought it was stand-up, even though we made it very clear in our advertising, this is not stand-up. And even people at shows would come up to us expecting a stand-up set.
Yeah.
And even stand-up in the Gulf is relatively new, within the last 15, 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact that it took so long for these new forms of entertainment to get to the region, I'm going to say the Middle East as a whole, because I would argue it's the whole region, the Gulf at least. One of the challenges we face is that, unlike in the U.S. where there's a demand and you have a relatively well-educated audience, not in terms of their education background, but your average audience member, especially in the cities, they know what improv is, they know what stand-up is. They kind of
can tell the difference, right? If you saw somebody that was on SNL, that's not necessarily a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, they would know sketch comedy, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Here, there is less of a demand for that because a lot of people don't even know it's a thing.
Yeah.
And now a lot of people, luckily, when they saw improv, they're like, "Holy shit, this is wild. This is crazy. What is this?" But the problem is, it's when you're selling yourself to an audience that doesn't know what you are, it's you can have all the supply, but if there's no demand, essentially we had to we had to artificially create demand for the shows, which I think we actually did a decent job of doing.
I think the other challenge was the fact that you have also not just the audiences, but the venues themselves don't necessarily know.
Exactly.
Which is not necessarily the case in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah. Even a lot of the venues are like, what the hell is improv? And then once we started filming some of our stuff and getting street cred, they're like, okay, that's improv. Yeah, you guys are good.
Yeah.
But that is the biggest contrast between here and the U.S. is that many forms of entertainment are not in demand, and some are just not even known. But the talent here is good. And one thing I really wish there was more of, especially with, like, I hate to say it, like a British influence background in Bahrain, is just like the sheer lack of theaters. Now I know, plays and like
you're talking about like access for people, like community theaters that people could use.
Yeah, like plays, comedies, one act musicals. Now I do know, and for our viewers, or sorry, for our listeners, maybe they know, there are a couple of like communes, I guess that'd be the best way to describe it, of theater troupes in Bahrain, but they are super secretive and very insular. And,
they are insular in that sense.
I wish they'd be more open. Even if they, like I'm all about, like, hell yeah, do your plays in Arabic. But the thing is, it's like if you only advertise to 10 people, then your audience will always be 10 people. And it seems like they do art for the sake of art, which is fine. But they also seem to only do it to flex on other artists.
That is the truth. That is what bothers me the most in Bahrain, considering that we're not in, like, I've seen that kind of a combination of what you called apathy plus this desire to flex on other people. I've seen it happen in a city, a huge place, like a melting pot, if you will, because it tends to have its own it's a very diverse ecosystem, let's say in New York or Dubai or somewhere else. And there's enough of a territorial game being played, and a lot of things that can be claimed on the table as far as whether it's revenue, ticket sales, audiences. So people tend to do that flexing move. The problem I feel like here is that people are fighting over sometimes scraps and not much to go around. And when we could actually collaborate more, and you end up seeing this flexing, it's like, well, what?
I don't even see them at and not to suck my own dick here too much, but it's like, I'm a relatively.
Please. This is what the show's about. Please continue.
All right, I will auto-filate myself, inshallah. What? But what?
Go ahead.
Stuck for a while. All right. Anyway, but like I don't even see them fucking advertise, and like I would argue I'm a well-connected guy in Bahrain. Like I look for these things.
Yeah, but some people make that same claim about us, for example. There's a lot of people that will say, the stand-up community, they don't necessarily tell us about their shows, even though Abdullah tries. Abdullah puts out ads.
And our friends at the Stand-Up Society, by the way, give them a follow, people at standupsociety.bahrain. They do a phenomenal job of, like, one of the best kind of like grassroots advertisers that they do. I think they got over 1,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
They do all types of stand-up shows. Khalid, phenomenal stand-up comedian. Check his stuff out. Me, I'm just some asshole that makes shit up.
Do you do me a favor by just like sharing this video and subbing and hitting a comment? If you actually do a comment, that's what triggers YouTube's algorithms.
Shameless plug?
No, I'm just saying. If you want me to auto, what did you call it? Auto-fillet?
Auto-fillet myself.
That's a nice one. It should be like something on a KFC menu. You want the fried auto-fillet, please?
Yes. Actually, I'm on a diet. I'll take a Diet Coke with my auto-fellation.
Right. We're going to do this with improv next time. We have a group of people when Corona-chan is over. We'll do some improv on the podcast. But yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Getting back to these communities and the fact that they're insular. And like you said, they flex on each other.
They do.
There's a bit of a desire to feel special. So, for example, for people that don't know, I recently just quit the radio. Shock. I announced it last time on the podcast, but I don't think a lot of people heard it. So I'm saying it again. I'm going to make another video that's specifically about that later on in the week. But I'll tell you something about the culture in radio, where there's a lot of people that I've said it since the start of it. To no fault at anyone there specifically, although there have been some people that I do not understand, and their ego and determination to fight over scraps has been insane, right? There's still an unusual kind of apathy, like you said, and a desire to kind of say, we're going to push past the status quo. We're going to do some more stuff. We have these plans. We have this, we have this, we have this, we have this. But really, at the end of the day, the average person is just interested in getting the paycheck and making sure nothing is destabilized.
Yeah, just kind of going through the motion. You can tell the people that are passionate about it because they want to
run.
They want to affect change. And like like Hold My Carrick, for example. Like how many conversations have we had about like how we can make the process better?
Oh.
Like the two of us.
100 ways. My pet peeve, the thing that pisses me off the most, is feeling like I want to fly, and other people are just like, they don't have necessarily the same creative direction.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I don't judge people, even when I bring up the example of radio, right? For a lot of people that do look at it as a paycheck, and it's like, hey man, I don't care about where this goes, and I'm not, as long as things are not destabilized, as long as we're fine.
I just say weenie in the butt, and then just everything works. Weenie.
Everything is as it is, and that's fine. I'm okay with that, because that's reality. Is fuck my creativity, fuck art, fuck entertainment. At the end of the day, the most important thing is people get paid. They get to go back to job security, especially in these trying economic times. You have people that care about their kids, their family, etc. So no judgment on that side. But when I was brought on because I was told I was going to be part of this new wave of change. And I was interested because I was like, hey, the first person, and you know this about me in Bahrain, I'm so tired of the apathy that I will run with the first person that wants to fly, right? I'll be like, I can't catch up to you. I'm going to keep running until I get to somewhere.
We also know people that it seems like they're flying, and then when you actually look, the wings are just falling off, and
that's right.
It turns out they weren't a bird.
No, they
were in disguise.
Goddamn flying fish, man.
Baby, we'll just make it in the desert, man.
These fucking penguins.
What about all the security? We have people that'll work on that. Come on, just invest all this money. And it's like,
that's the thing. That's exactly it. I've tried. I've tried with a lot of communities. I've tried with a lot of different groups, from the smaller scale to the bigger one. And this. We wanna go ahead, and then there's the small things that people kind of squibble over and quabble over, whatever the word is, but they end up draining the process, slowing it down. And you're just at the starting phase. You're this seed. You're this nascent beginning. Like, you remember, I would tell Mike all the time that, especially with the legal thing we were talking about at the start, was never really a legal thing, but let's assume it was. If we had been raking in cash, if we had been making like 5,000 dinars a month, do you know what I mean? If we were making like 500 dinars a month, if we were making 50 dinars.
Jesus, oh man, we're getting really ambitious here.
You know what I mean? If we were doing
we had more than 2 audience members on a show. I'm just kidding.
No, but we had a good chunk, a good beginning. We had a good solid movement, a good following. We had at the beginning of something that is still to this day looked on with fondness, and people like it, and they look forward to it every time. But people strangle it in the way that you've described, and there's this, either it's apathy or this flexing. So you've brought this up. You see all the talent and the creativity in Bahrain. You see the originality compared to other places like the States. What do you feel like is the solution to this other downside? You've seen it yourself now over the last couple of years.
I think people need to take initiative. And initiative here is a double-edged sword, because there have been times where I've taken initiative on something, and then suddenly everyone's like, wow, someone's actually doing something about this. Let's make them do everything. And then you kind of get overwhelmed a little bit. You're just like, no, teamwork. Because, you can't build a house on just like one pillar. You need a strong foundation.
Is that the Arab obsession with the Messiah figure? Do you know what I mean? Like the great ruler that's going to come in and fix everything. It happens in the States as well in the election season. Do you know what I mean? Vote a president in. He's going to change all of it.
It's kind of like, when it comes to elections, it's like, I know deep down, I'm not a very political person, but it's like deep down, you're just like, is everyone really going to be happy? No. Yeah. Are all our problems really going to go away just because this one person happens to be in charge? Not necessarily. No. In many ways, it's kind of like it's the same shit, just repackaged.
Yeah.
As America. We'll get back on the HMK thing in a sec. I would argue, I don't know. It's finding people that like genuinely are interested in change for the masses, whether it be creatively or for the government, is getting harder to find. I don't know, maybe.
But that's the reason why in the States you find that a lot of people believe in the individual, states' rights, individual people. The smaller something is, the more you get big government out of the picture, or even just big enterprise, whatever big is, the more you get people that can run, that can fly in the way we've been describing.
Oh yeah, right? and having the entrepreneurial spirit, and just like the spirit of independence, that manifest destiny, coast to coast, big picture, big dick energy, if you will. That's what America was built on. I mean, literally, it was a mix of like big dick energy and like manifest destiny.
Yeah,
they're just like, we're gonna go from coast to coast, and the frogs are gay. No, I'm just kidding. But
that's what happens when you attract the craziest people in the world that are willing to cross that land, the ocean.
Unfortunately, a lot of people that want to take initiative have what I would argue are very bad ideologies in mind.
Yeah,
but you have a lot. But like in many ways, America is apathetic, kind of like how I described Bahrain. So you have people that are like, well, I mean, that guy seems to know what he's talking about. Yeah, let's vote for him. Okay, and then here we are.
So how do you combat that at the small scale? Because it's surprising to me. Like I said, if something was huge, if we had 20 members in an improv troupe, and within those 20 we had like say even accountants, a management team, ticket office, a box office, whatever it is, or even if you're applying that same thing to any of the art scenes, entertainment in Bahrain. If you had something at that scale, you can understand the communal politics and the back and forth, a little bit of bureaucracy here, some slowdown. But when you're small, you're supposed to be nimble. You're supposed to be able to kind of like bend and flex your way through problems.
You flex, you adapt, you change.
Yeah. So what's the problem with Bahrain? You feel like it's just a cultural thing? I've asked the question myself from the inside, but you've come in from the outside.
Ooh, that's where Mike D gets a little deep.
Yeah, Mikey, come on.
Hold on, it's loading. Just imagine like a loading screen. The Apple wheel.
I got him. I got him in the corner. Now he's gonna have to give us something profound. Mikey going deep with that D.
Deep D. Deep D, Mikey D. What's it do? All right, brain blast. Got a blast. All right, Jimmy Neutron. All right, let's get this shit. Come on, set apps.
You got it.
Come on.
You got it. I'll look at the chat whilst you think about this, all right?
I think hopefully they're saying positive things.
Oh, they are. Yeah, that's good questions.
Whose man is this? Why does he keep twitching? Sorry, fam.
Abdullah says, I'll auto-fillet myself. Here comes the demonetization club.
Right.
Do you think we were ever going to make money from YouTube, bro?
We can make money from auto-filleting ourselves,
That's
though.
true. We'll probably make a lot more for that comment. We'll get sponsored by it.
Okay, so overall, just to clarify, the question is, like, how can, Bahrain kind of get past the apathy point?
Yeah. Because I'll tell you something. As an example, I've brought it up multiple times on this podcast, on this show. When I look at Saudi, and I feel jealous because I look at my brothers and sisters across the causeway, the ones I grew up with, and I kept going back and forth from Bahrain to Saudi, having family on this side, family on that side, school at one point there, then education halfway through my life here. Mm-hmm. I've seen it both sides. And now that they have all the opportunity and they've had everything open up, you see there's an inner desire that was always, bottled up because people will tell them, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. We won't regulate for that. You're not allowed to do that. Haram this. Haram. And sometimes it's not even just haram. It's just an inability to do things because of authoritarianism, right?
It's like a cultural thing.
Exactly. So you didn't have that in Bahrain. People in Bahrain were generally, as long as you stay away from the big taboos, which are not many, right? You generally can do anything, right? If you have the resources, you have the community, you can do anything. But Bahrainis themselves felt very free to do that, and yet they were just, taking their time, enjoying themselves. Certain sectors, you'd see some entrepreneurial spirit. You'd see some movement. Let's say musicians and bands in Bahrain have come a long way from what they were before.
Oh, yeah.
You look at the medical community, it's at a higher standard than other sectors, other communities. So things move in certain waves, right? But when it comes to the arts and entertainment, Saudi has just exploded, right? And I don't know if that's just size and population, but there's also a drive.
I've got it. It's a twofold process. One, you need to, in a sense, you kind of have to manufacture a desire for people who aren't artists to either have the interests of an artist or to suddenly want what they didn't know they want. That's one part of it.
Right.
So kind of like what we did where you have people that didn't even know what the fuck improv was. And we were like, hey, here's a new way of laughing. And people were like, la, I can laugh this way?
Yeah.
La. And then suddenly, Instagram's blowing up and basically it's like you have to, in a sense, as generic it sounds, you have to like show people that they now need this. What is the goal of advertising in general? It's to manufacture in many ways a desire sometimes a desire, sometimes a insecurity that can be fulfilled through purchase.
Right.
All right. So in many ways, we have to create a need that can be fulfilled through art, whether it be physical art, whether it be performance arts, etc. A new form of entertainment. And two, I think you have to get buy-in from the artist that it's something that can actually grow.
Right.
But you also, at the same time, need to tread this tightrope where you need inputs, because if one or two people are running everything, then it kind of becomes like...
It squashes that diversity of thought.
Well, that, and you also have to, like, let people realize that, like, they need to contribute, because there will be people that are more eager than others to contribute.
Right.
And some people just kind of like have a hands off, like, oh, well, like, he's got it, like, I'll let him do it. But it's like, you need to have like a clear leadership structure, but you need to have buy-in from all the members. And I think sometimes...
So there's this perfect storm that has to kick in, both culturally, with the right people, the right financial incentive, the right pull. There's been moments, like I'll say in American history, when you look at entertainment, there's times where people have kind of been through recessions.
Oh, yeah.
And comedy or something else is the only thing they can afford, but it gives them a release. Yes. Right? So you have that kind of factor kicking in on somewhere. Do you feel like Bahrain is going to hit a point where there's something equivalent to that, where, you know, people are just like, you know what, like now, for example, now people can't go out. They can't do shit.
Well, I would argue you've already seen, so people in many ways are turning to each other for entertainment. Because, I mean, you know, think of like, you know, how many Zoom calls are being made, like friends or people are realizing now more than ever that, like, they need to do things besides, they need to do more than just like what they would normally do for entertainment, because it's one of those, like, when everything is suddenly taken away from you, like, you realize like what you had, and then you realize like what you missed that you didn't even know you missed.
Yeah.
You know, there are people that are used to, like, not even in like a party or like bar club setting, like used to seeing individuals, you know, their friends, like people that they would talk to, share feelings with, you know, just talk about life, and, you know, just share like a more personal side of their lives with. And when you take that away, it's like it's something that's so fundamental, like human interaction, that people, especially because there hasn't been a pandemic in the last century until this one, human interaction is such a fundamental concept. Just being able to go outside and go to a restaurant, go to a bar, things that were normally mundane, that when you take that away from people, they're like, holy shit, like, yo, I need this back. And that's why everyone's freaking out, because it's like, even the people that didn't go out that much, like, now that you've taken away just the option, an option that they would normally decline to do, they're like, it's that insecurity of like, oh shit, now people really want to do it. And likewise, like, in a sense, you know, people are adapting by entertaining each other. But I think when all this is said and done, if, you know, the theaters and the entertainers and the artists, like, I think you're going to see a big, maybe not quite a renaissance, but a big push as soon as all this is done and clear, to just get everything out there. Because you are going to have a lot of people that are pent up and not creating, or maybe creating in private, like, you know, by themselves, that just want to, it's going to be a tidal wave.
My theory is it's going to be
all the concerts, the parties, like people, and like you know,
maybe not for the big events, but I was talking about this in one of the episodes when I was ranting on my own. I was saying, you know, this is an opportunity for smaller scale grassroots movements, small shows, nimble shows, like I said, to go out there when this thing is done, because all the big money will probably be not there for this next year. Okay.
Well, that, and even when the all clear bell is good to go, people are still going to act out of an abundance of caution.
Yes.
So it's you know, it's not going to be like a switch. It's flipped and it goes from like nothing to.
But I can promise you that at least you're going to have the younger kids that are a lot less concerned go out there and they're dying, right? You're going to have college kids. You're going to have a lot of people that are cooped up that are suddenly going to have, like you said, this motivation, this desire to actually see and do stuff.
Yes.
And because they've been told not to, kind of like the Saudi analogy I gave you. It's like, trapped. And now it's open. Go and do stuff, right?
Maybe that's the key, you know, just like make places more like Saudi.
You know?
Wait a second.
Just compress it down for a couple of years, a couple of generations, and then just boom, and just let it out. I'm telling you, man, that's how innovation kicks up.
It's the halal spring effect, if you will.
But
spring-loaded.
That's what I said to Ahmed, the comedian from the States. Ahmed, the Egyptian comedian. I told him in the States when he was bringing up freedom of speech and being a necessary component for stand-up, I was like, yeah, but there's also something to be said about being having restricted speech. So if you have that line and you're being told not to say this, not to say that, not to that, it kills you. It's
gonna make you want to say it more. It's like don't click the giant red button.
Yes.
Fuck, man. Like normally I would have ignored it, but now that
you know what I mean. Like even back in the 1950s in the States, you had laws that would basically put comedians in jail. I can't remember who it was. The name.
It was Joseph McCarthy in the House of Un-American. It was the House Committee of Un-American Activities.
Was it a McCarthyism thing?
It was McCarthyism and the Red Scare. I think that's what you're referring to.
No, but is this specifically, I can't remember who the comedian was that got put into jail for saying something that was considered obscene at the time. I can't remember who it was.
Obscene or pro-communist?
No, obscene, not pro-communist.
You said in the 50s?
I think it was 50s, yeah. 50s, 40s, 50s.
I don't know, because a lot of people are getting like...
Think Catskills comedy, the old school days. Back when, you don't just get a fine.
Yeah.
If you can't pay the fine, you go to jail, that kind of thing.
I'd have to dig into that because,
We'll figure it out. We'll come to it in another episode.
Yeah.
But the point I'm saying is that even then, if you assume like some of these huge FCC fines you get hit with, anything else that would violate certain standards and practices set forth either by networks or something else. If you violated those, you're out of your business, out of your career. So in a lot of ways, they were restricted, and that made them have to think a little bit deeper about how to cross the line without crossing it. Do you know what I mean?
Basically, to get around the censors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it makes you like it's like when you have the cops and robbers thing. If you don't have anybody chasing you, there are no cops, you're not going to be as like. There's a military term for this. I can't remember what it was. The defense versus offense thing. As fortification builds up, then people start to develop more offensive weaponry, and then they start thinking about the defense versus the offense. And then as technology develops, the thinking develops as well. How to counter this, and this one counters that. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm talking about here? The evolution of...
It's like this guy thinks I'm in the military. Fuck?
I think it was called something, the evolution of offense versus defense. So things that will protect and fortify.
Yeah. Let's go.
No?
With that. Okay. I work on ships, man. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I thought I assumed
like if you want to talk about how to shoot a 50 cal, like I got you.
All right, fair.
But like
I get smart like
theory,
I don't know. I read this somewhere. It was not even just used as a. It was used as theory crafting for any kind of like back and forth system.
Mutually assured destruction. I'm just
mutually assured self-fellatio.
Yes. Was it mass?
Mass fellate.
Mass F.
But yeah, the idea is it's kind of like the whole theme of like you develop. You see this even in video games, right? Throughout the cycle of a competitive video game, the offense will come up with a strategy, especially one of those that kind of with the time, the end of the game, things start to add up.
Good counter.
Yeah, right. People level up, they get more points, they get more skills. You think of a Dota or something like that. And as the game progresses and the level progresses, there's an early game, a mid game, and a late game. Mm-hmm. And the offense versus defense strategies will keep adapting and counter adapting based on what you do. So if you decide I'm going to have a better strategy against you, I'm going to use this approach to stop you from saying that joke in comedy. My defensive strategy will have to now counteract your newest threat.
Okay.
And I'm going to be like, okay, so I can't say shit. Then I'm just going to say, the word for shit in Yiddish. And you can't, I got away from...
yes, l'chaim.
Whatever that is. I can't remember what a shechzul. I don't know.
Yes, for our listeners, comment now to win. I'm just kidding.
But yeah,
Weedy and the... All right, I'll stop. It's an inside joke, but
yeah, it is. But yeah, that's the concept. I feel like for a lot of these like histories of entertainment. And,
really, when it boils down to it, Bahrain's biggest problem is that people don't follow through. I think if the creatives literally would do what they said they're going to, even if you have an audience that doesn't necessarily want that form of entertainment or didn't know that they want it, you would be able to. If there's one thing I've learned about being in Bahrain for 2.5 years is that even if it's short-lived, like Bahrainis love things that are new. They're just like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
Let's check it out. Doesn't matter if it's good or not. They'll at least go check it out.
But do you feel like that's short-lived? Like it's like, okay, this is the new thing. I'm going to eat it for a bit and then...
If it's good, they'll stick around. Not everyone. inherently, like, like the tides, you will have some people that regardless of it, like, wow, I love this. This is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
All right, see ya.
The diehard fans.
But the thing is, if you keep it fresh and you actually mix it up in your performance or whatever you do as an artist, and you follow through, even if you only get a handful of people to stick around each time, the more you do, the more handfuls you're going to get. And eventually, I mean, like, look at any band that's based out of Bahrain. When they started, they might be playing the same venues that they are now, but the difference is how many people they got.
Right.
And it would always start off small. In Bahrain, like, rarely do you start big. You do something and, like, everyone's like, fuck yeah, like, let's get... You start small. And I think it's just... You have to just, like, going to the gym or, like, working on, like, your body. It's just, you gotta do it and trust the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is missing. I think we've reached the epiphany. Trust the process and follow through.
So the long-term thinking is the most important thing here, and doing it bit by bit.
I think so, because, like, you can hit it hard. You don't want to oversaturate the market. Like, if you're doing, like, 5 improv shows a week, people are gonna be like, I won't go this week. Like, they're always doing one. But
finding that sweet spot is difficult, though, right? Without knowing it.
It is, and that's a matter of, like, like, take improv for example. If we do 2 or 3 shows a month, every show should be different. It can be short form one show, then long form another show, and maybe something in between another show. And if you do it at 3 different venues, those are 3 different audiences you have, as opposed to doing the same short form show 3 times in 1 month.
All right. So that's a good point to kind of leave that last little bit of a discussion on. I want to move it to the audiences themselves, because I feel like, by the way, I'm going to put this little caveat here. You guys were a bit going to be going over our time, which is fine, because I feel like it's entertaining. I love this conversation. But just
does he though?
I do. Secretly, I don't. I hate you all. Every single one of you. I hate you.
The real banter is what you can hear.
It's be Patreon
Weenie
later on.
And the banter nuts.
I add in like a subscription. Pay 1 dinar for me to tell you how I really feel about you fuckers.
And watching us auto-fillet ourselves.
Yes, that's for later on. That's for Twitch.
That's 10DD.
So I was going to say, guys, make sure if you want to submit any questions to do it now, because then I'll read them all out once for Mike, and then we can talk about that. But my last bit of conversation, I'm going to bring up about shows and entertainment after getting all of your background, understanding where you come from and your history with entertainment in Bahrain and overseas. Do you feel like the audiences surprised you here? The way they react, they engage? Because let's be honest, American audiences are so easy to get them excited. Do you know what I'm saying? Mostly. Like if I'm doing, I'm not talking about stand up, by the way. I'm talking getting them to laugh. Different thing in the States.
Very true.
But getting Americans excited to just say, "Hey, come on, everybody! We're gonna clap!" And then people are like, "Yes, you're amazing! Oh God!"
Yeah, if Americans love things that are bright, shiny. If you're in a game show, like Jesus, those people go wild.
They do,
probably because they have the chance to win money. But like,
and they're not even drunk, by the way. It's just that.
Oh, very sober. Yeah. It is easy to, literally based off our history, like. You change a couple things and like we'll get into a fervor, good or bad,
Yeah, and
introduce something new, good or bad. Like people will get riled up. I mean, just literally just Google Southern history and you will be amazed.
I don't know where that comes from, by the way, because there's nothing from like if you look at immigrant history. Okay, maybe Irish were excitable, maybe. Italians.
I'll tell you, it was excitable. The people that hated the Irish when they first got here. Oh God.
No, but anger,
Irish had it bad for
anger
a while.
and racism just is excitable for a lot of cultures anyway, right?
Yes.
But if you look at the history of mostly Germanic ancestral blood in the States, a lot of the Dutch, a lot of different places in Western Europe, very very Protestant, very low key people, very disciplined people. Where does the fervor come from? How did that happen?
I think it's just America prides ourselves on being bigger, better, louder, faster, everything. We pride ourselves in trying to be the best.
Right.
Much to our chagrin sometimes. We like in America things are bigger. You can be louder. You can do it better. You can be more. You can do whatever the fuck you want, basically.
But was that just your generation, your dad's? I don't like. You look back to World War II. I don't see that. Not really. Like I don't see that over the top attitude.
Well, that's the thing too, because for a while you got to remember, like, America was a very isolationist country. They're just like, fuck everyone else. Like,
yeah,
we'll just take care of number one. So Americans have always been kind of like big and boastful in their own way.
Okay.
And we also have had a long track record of not caring about the rest of the world. I'd say inherently we're kind of a selfish country. Less so now, maybe, but
right. So maybe not always been loud, but always had character. Always had.
Always
brashness.
Oh, absolutely.
Spunk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gumption. You know.
Yeah.
Bully, as Theodore Roosevelt used to say.
That's right. So there you go. You have that as a background of your experience in the States, and everybody knows it. Everybody's experienced it in the rest of the world. Now you come to Bahrain, and Bahrainis can laugh. They can enjoy it. Even some of the girls that we unexpectedly didn't know, we'd think that most of the suggestions in improv, the dirty ones, would come from guys.
The mutahajibas do surprise me sometimes.
They surprise us with some of these like explicit comments.
If you think autofellatio is dirty, you should hear what they say sometimes.
So that's a surprise. But then when it comes to getting people warmed up and participating, does it surprise you that everybody's very calm, very reserved, not very engaging? Like nobody's gonna lift up their hand and say, "Hey, I'm coming up on stage."
Oh, like here?
Yeah.
So I see that. I'm gonna focus more improv. I think inherently in any audience, even if they're familiar with the format, like, why do people come to see comedy? Why do people come to see improv? Because they want to see people do things that either they wouldn't think that they could do, or like a lot of people that watch improv, especially at our shows, I would argue most of them don't have a desire to actually do improv. They just want to be entertained. They think it's great. They think it's funny. But, a lot of people have stage fright. A lot of people are uncomfortable in front of others.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a universal thing. I wouldn't say that's a more Bahraini thing. Like, you go to America, you have people that, are uncomfortable with public speaking, that don't want to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Bahrain, Africa, anywhere. That's a universal trait.
Fair enough, yeah. But I would assume that at least there's a difference between like I've had the experience where there are people in other places of the world, like if you look at Japan, you look at even the UK, you have some very reserved people.
Oh yeah.
Okay, but in Japan and the UK, once they're in a club, once they're doing comedy, once they're in that room for improv, they either know where they're at and therefore their demeanor and they kind of get more relaxed and things change in the night.
Okay.
Or they're hammered. And as the Japanese and the British, are, when they do get hammered, it's kind of like the flip side to everything. Now, I'm not going to generalize here, but what I'm talking about with Arab audiences is that, like I said, you get the same excitement when it comes to them laughing, when it comes to them giving you suggestions, when it comes to everything else. But when you want to warm up the crowd, you can't just say, all right, everybody, we're going to clap our hands together. Everybody, come on, loosey-goosey, do this, do this. It's not as easy. And it's surprising to me. And I wonder if you've seen that difference yourself, if you felt like it was a cultural issue. Do you feel like it's a significant change from the States to here? Do you feel like it's...
Honestly, I don't think it's a huge significant. I think it's just like people, even if they want to see entertainment, they still have to kind of get into that mindset, that right. It's like a performer. It's like, the audience has to be. I agree. The audience has to be warmed up to an extent.
Yeah.
Even if they're in the right frame of mind, like they come in, they're like, I want to be entertained. Like I want to see comedy. I want to laugh. For whatever reason, it's hard to kind of just jump right into it. That's why there's introductions. That's why there's a little bit of background, especially in improv, so people kind of like fully know, like, hey, this is what I'm seeing.
Right. So you're taking it back to that idea that because it's already not very well known here, if we're only sticking to improv, it's not that well known. Entertainment is not that exposed. People are not so exposed to entertainment in Bahrain, so they don't necessarily know what they're into. Whilst maybe an audience abroad will come to a club or watch a show knowing what to expect, and therefore they're kind of already geared to it. Or
I think that's part of it. But I don't know. In terms of like, if the audience thinks something is funny, I mean, people laugh very heartily here,
yeah.
And I don't think it's like ever hindered us or from shows I've seen like an audience. I mean, if the quality is good, they get into it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because again, like Bahrainis, they like things that are new. So there's already a level of curiosity when it's like a new thing like improv or stand up or something like that.
So do you feel like we're at least missing maybe the showmanship? Because we were talking about this before the podcast about how like you see Jimmy Fallon, you see all these shows. Now that you have the COVID situation, it shows you the truth behind how much of it is produced as a show.
Yeah.
And getting the audience warmed up. There's always a stand-up before the show. He's warming them up, getting them comfy. The room is as cold as this is to keep you awake. You know what I mean?
That is, that is true.
There's a lot of this small stuff that goes into making the audience kind of ready to be entertained.
I think it just when you hit them hard with like jokes, and they're good, it gets their attention, and then you can kind of go on to more complex things.
Right.
But I don't know. In terms of like us being like hindered based off an audience, I mean, I don't know. I haven't really felt that. I think that's the thing. Every audience is going to be different, regardless of how much you warm up. You can do the exact same jokes that killed with one audience that might with another. Or that might not with another.
Yeah.
As generic as it sounds, like results are going to vary. I think just the fact that you can get an audience means that the people are interested and they want to be entertained.
Right.
And then that's up to us at that point to provide them with what they paid for.
Okay, I agree with you on that one. That's a solid agreement there. No. I wanted to see if I could push a bit more, see if there was any distinctions. I don't see them generally, like you said. It varies from audience to audience. Although I do feel a difference between the older crowd in the Middle East and the younger ones.
Oh, I agree. That's the same because generations have different forms of entertainment, or not forms. Generations have find certain things more appealing or funny or humorous. Like a sexist joke about women might land better with a middle-aged audience than people are our age.
Yeah,
because I have a feeling that like inherently the younger generations are more liberal or just open to new ideas, especially with the time that they're living in, with the information age and technology and phones.
I feel like that's the opposite in the West. I feel like in the States and other places, I've seen the younger crowd be the sensitive crowd, and it's usually the older crowd from Brits and Americans that are telling me.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. Is in like a sexist joke might land better with an older audience
over there.
Because they might be quote unquote like not. Is like liberally thinking.
Right, I thought you were talking about specifically in the Middle East, because in the Middle East it's kind of flipped for some reason.
Oh no,
I've seen the younger kids are the ones that I'm worried I'm going to offend, and then I find out they're the ones that think we're not going raunchy enough. I'm like, guys, calm down.
Yeah, I would say in the U.S. the younger audience is going to let you get away with. Well, okay, I see what you're saying now. So okay, I think if you make a sexist joke, in both the Middle East and the U.S., the older crowds are going to find it funny. They'll approve.
Yeah.
But your complaints are more likely going to come from the younger people.
Yeah.
In both. If you make a sexist joke, for example.
Yeah, which is a recent phenomenon. It's not been like it started like only in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think, but inherently, like certain jokes are going to land better with an older audience, depending on what references you're making, and like racial jokes are probably going to land better with an older audience than they would with a younger audience.
Yeah,
and and then things like on the flip side, jokes about like technology, dating. I would say like regional specific, like 21st century dating. Those are going to land better with a younger audience than an older audience. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about what they can relate to.
Right.
People that were older grew up in a time where literally women were thought of as being like that much different than men. So when they talk about a joke, about like the hot secretary who's like a ditz and ass they can smack, like they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember my dad. So, because comedy, like it's like things that people can relate to.
Yeah.
And like a lot of laughs come from like either A, treating the absurd seriously, or B, being relatable to people, because people like in their minds, like they think like, oh, like this only happens to me, and then like why are certain memes funny where it's like like COVID-19 plans, it's like going to the gym, working out, drinking water, and then in the other picture it's like COVID-19 reality, and you're just like Netflix, chips every, because people are like, oh yeah, that's me.
That's the truth. Yeah,
comedy is things that they can relate to.
So do you feel like it's become easier to relate to people now that you have meme culture, a global audience more than a regional audience?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, do you feel like
memes,
because I wouldn't feel the difference. I can't. I felt it when I was in the States, that I have to kind of understand where I'm at and figure out that my my journey, my story, whatever it is I'm trying to relate to is not necessarily going to be the struggle that these people have gone through. So I have to understand what the person in Miami is like compared to the person in Bahrain. But do you feel that way when you're here, that certain jokes or certain ideas that you're going for were not landing because you felt alien, or did you feel like, no, it's become a global thing?
There's definitely you gotta remember who your audience is, and so like if you know that you're going to perform at the Raven's Nest, follow at the Raven's Nest Bahrain, by the way, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I think they have a Twitter. But like if I'm performing at the Raven's Nest, I know that, you know, like as an improviser, really any set that I do, generally speaking, my audience is going to be younger, so I'm going to be mentally prepared for more raunchy suggestions. And, you know, like dirtier jokes. That being said, you know, it's a different type of energy. Likewise, if I go to, you know, like the old venue Mushk, I know it's going to be a bit of an older crowd, maybe a little bit more reserved. The exposure to improv is going to be less. I'm going to have to kind of set the audience up better for, one, like what we're doing on stage, and two, like kind of helping to set them up for like the suggestions that they give me. Maybe giving them, you know, like a little bit more lead in time. Audiences are going to respond, you know, if it's like mostly women, they might respond to something faster or slower than, you know, like a man would for like different types of jokes.
Because it's a weird mix in Bahrain, man. You get people that are very niche. They understand pop culture at an impressive rate, and they have even an understanding of like subculture and references and memes and Rick and Morty stuff. And then you have people that are. Have you ever been to any of the comedy clubs that'll be at a city, like one of the mainstream tourist comedy clubs? I forgot what the one in London is.
I think so. Yeah. They do jokes that like they do very like generic jokes.
Yes.
Yeah. Because especially with like comedians like making specific references. There are specific like Arab references that like, you know, someone once commented that like a thing that I'm like really good at in my comedy is like making like a very, very local or like Arab reference.
Right.
And what it does is it catches people off guard and they find that hilarious.
Because they don't expect it from you. That's the best part.
Exactly. Because even that, like, I might not necessarily look like I'm in the military. I mean, like, I'm not the healthiest person, and my hair is usually longer than it should be. But they know I'm not from here. Yeah. And so that's the thing. When they see someone that they know for a fact is definitely not from here, and especially with
there's a whole fan club that's obsessed with Mike's astaghfirullah. That's the one thing, though, the word that gets them the first.
Apparently that, and like, you know, Mutahajba always throws them.
Another one is Tuzbul Kafar. That's
I got a handful of sayings that, you know, I bust out with right pronunciation.
He does.
But you know, like if I was doing improv for a Bahraini audience, I wouldn't really talk about being in the Navy. I probably wouldn't mention it at all. There would be people that would inherently know or like assume.
Yeah.
But I think my comedy would more focus on what it is to be me in Bahrain.
Yeah.
And maybe commenting on some like very, very local specific things that they wouldn't expect me to know.
Right.
You know, like I wouldn't talk about politics per se, but like, you know, if I did a bit where it was like, you know, like Fatum and Ahmed going on a date to City Center, and I don't know, they ran out of something that like is very local and specific. You know, like people are inherently, they're going to be a little surprised, and like they might find it funny that I'm like, you know,
they love it being relatable. That's the number one thing.
Well, the irony, the dramatic irony is that, or not dramatic, the irony is that like me as a mostly white person, you know, relating or you know, pretending like I relate to this situation that I've never been put into.
Oh,
yeah. And
that's the thing, like that constant struggle in Bahrain that I've seen people have with you know, what you described, and you understood me perfectly when I said those specific tourist comedy clubs in London, New York.
It's all about identity, you know, like those comedians aren't going to make like South London or like East London jokes, because they have to know their audience. Most of the audience,
but that also means that things have to be really streamlined. Sometimes some people would call it dumbing it down.
Maybe, yeah.
Taken to very basic old school jokes. You know, things that, you know, very predictable. You know,
there's always humor that, you know, like everyone goes through similar experiences. You know, like relationships, family. Yeah. You know,
but certain angles have been done to death.
Oh yeah,
we both know that. So
racism, sexist jokes, family jokes, relationships. I mean, they're generic. They work because so many people have been able to relate to them. But they are overdone.
So that's one of the things I get from people that ask me. They're like, "Hey, why is it that certain comedians or certain people in entertainment in Bahrain, why are they doing these angles to their comedy that have been done to death? Man?
They have to know their audience. It's like if I'm performing for the royal court, I might I'll be honest, I'd probably try to throw in like a local reference joke just to really catch them off guard. But if I'm performing for the king and his family, I'm probably not going to talk about the Navy because they wouldn't be able to relate. The joke might be hilarious for people in the military. Yeah. But, because they're like, if you want to talk about a group that has like fucking inside jokes, I mean, like 95% of like how we speak and the things that we do, in a sense, are, like they're not even jokes. It's just like, it's insider knowledge, Yeah. Like I could.
Very true.
Yeah. Like I could make jokes all day about like the online systems that we have and, like all the terms and phrases, but like, if someone isn't in the military, they're not going to know. But if I know my audience is mostly military people or like vets, that I can throw in some of those references.
Exactly.
Because when I say something like, oh yeah, like
a good example would be like when I'm doing a set and I see the typical like Navy guy in the audience, and even if he's a heckler or anything else, I'd go straight to my oh God, you guys always pretend to be geologists. What are you today?
Yeah.
What are you?
And that joke always lands because people are like, oh yeah, they're. Yeah, we inherently know that most white people here are, the military.
They're trying to not be in the military. So Bahrainis are going to get it, and the Americans are going to get it. But finding jokes like that or finding angles like that, bits like that, don't necessarily come easy. And a lot of people...
It takes time.
Well, I know, but that's not just the thing you deal with. Is a lot of people will criticize the local scene, the local comedy, saying it's too basic, but they don't realize that we are a melting pot, and people are at different levels of understanding references and what's what. So there has to be this little vanilla level of comedy that goes with it. So a perfect example would be when I'm on the radio sometimes, a lot of people say, man, we love your content about Florida. We love this. We love all this stuff that you do about the overseas, pop, whatever the most topical thing is. And then they'll say, but yeah, we'd like to hear more local stuff, man. And we want local Bahraini stuff. And in my head, I'm like, well, yeah, but you have to understand the process involves me having to go into Bahraini local stuff and dissect every little thing to figure out whether first I can make fun of this company. Can I make fun of this person? No. So it's not.
Well, as we've discussed, one thing I really wish we could make fun of is I'm just gonna say the divide, if you will.
Not even that.
Oh, I think that is a gold mine.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Like a regular talk show host or any kind of show, a comedy show, I'd be able to go at videos from like CEOs making press briefings that fumble, and I'd be able to joke about that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the average person can't handle that. In this island, they get really offended. Well, there's a lot of sensitivities.
I think most of the population can handle it. I think it's the companies that have sway.
Exactly.
The businesses, the sponsors.
Exactly. So you can't, from an institutional point of view, when I'm representing a company, I can't do those jokes. I can't be myself. I can't necessarily go at people, go at institutions, go at brands or whatever it is. I can try to make things as local as possible, but then there's a drought of material to feed off of. So therefore, where do you naturally go? You go to the most accessible thing possible. And the most accessible, safe thing possible is global pop culture. And that's why you have this like thing you were talking about
which
before.
Unfortunately Bahrain is not really a part of as much as like I'm trying to think of last time like the world was like, besides the fucking French Calexico video gate 2020 when the world quote unquote was exposed to Bahrain.
Yeah, but don't you feel like there's at least a generation of people that are growing up, like you said, that have an understanding of all the global topics because there's an internet culture growing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just the Bahraini culture. There's a group of people.
Knowledge and information is the easiest it's ever been to be spread, even in these COVID times. Like, I mean, you just hop on the Google machine, the internet, you can pretty much find whatever the fuck you need.
True that. All right. That's, I wanted to say let's leave it on a good note, but I feel like I
Well, you said there was questions or something?
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't going to leave it there, but I was going to wrap it up the conversation, and then I lost my train of thought. Sorry, I'm also suffering from some cold medication that I'm dealing with.
Cold medication? Sounds sickness? Wait a second. Hold on. Murder.
All right, here we go. Questions. Straight to the chat. We're about an hour and more. By the way, if there's been any interruptions in the feed, I'm sorry. I keep seeing it freeze up, and then it's back to normal. So I don't know if that interrupted the YouTube feed at all.
Yeah, I was wondering why 0 people were watching. So
actually, there's been a decent chunk today and some good interaction on the comments.
Oh, nice. Okay. Hey guys.
Yeah.
How you doing? Good to see you.
I don't know Samia. I'm not sure who she is, but hi, Samia.
Hello, Samia.
Ahmed says, I think we are conditioned to have a perfectionist attitude towards performance arts because of what we see being done abroad. So when locals try to do the same thing, the same perfectionist thinking, so it's, yeah, you get what he's getting at?
Yeah, this guy's woke as fuck. Like, let's get. Can we have it? Damn shit! I don't even need. Bye. Get you on the show, bro.
This is somebody that is on the show. It's Matrouk.
Oh Jesus! Hey,
he just feels left out.
So hey, Matrouk.
He wants to contribute
as
something.
He flips through his fucking thesaurus. He's like, oh, let me see. Yes, the sum of the square root of the isosceles triangle. All right.
Yeah. So
good to see you, brother. Good to see you.
I like the question. He says, it's actually a statement more than it is a question. I think we are conditioned to have a perfectionist attitude towards performance arts because of what we see being done abroad. So when locals try to do the same thing, that same perfectionist thinking kicks in. I'm assuming that's what you were trying to say. So, are you dying on me?
No,
what's going on?
Sorry.
Jesus, man.
No, I'm good. I'm alert and spry and ready to fillet.
That's why I keep this freaking room freezing. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Matrouk, and I would agree. At least if you're talking specifically about the audiences, maybe, because they expect a high level instead of the process kind of being developed over time.
Well, I mean, not every stand-up set in Bahrain can be a Netflix special, but imagine if it was. Yeah. Sorry, you looked at me like you're going to ask me something. There's a pregnant pause.
It was intentional.
Yeah.
All right. Matrouk says, stage fright is extremely prevalent in Bahrain. The fact that someone can go on stage confidently, you're automatically looked at as a ballsy individual.
Agreed.
These are not questions, guys. These are statements. It's like when you're in a debate, you know, you're like, guys, can we make it a question, keep it short? Questions, not statements.
Hello, everyone.
And I
think, hello. Yes, preguntas, por favor. That's questions in Espanol.
Yeah.
Necesitamos más preguntas para tú.
Yeah.
This means we need questions from you.
We do. Abdullah says the idea of failing is kind of taboo over here in Bahrain. I'm guessing that makes it more difficult for people to contribute.
Is this Abdullah Nazar by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, 2 members that can't ask a fucking question.
We actually had about 5 people in total, I think, listening in, but they've been dropping in and out. Some of them listen with the phone off, so it doesn't show on the thing.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's no questions, so we're done.
Bet.
I gave you guys the chance.
Man.
Statements only.
Man.
Here's a question.
From Abdullah? Probably Abdullah.
Yeah, it is from Abdullah. It's a stupid question.
What's up, you little bitch?
He's not even funny in writing.
God,
you know what I mean? Like, he's not even funny in
stick
chat.
to just stand up, bro. Come on.
Here's a question, Mike. What's your favorite flavor of pie?
Pussy. No.
Thank you guys for watching the Bedouin Banter podcast.
The taste you can see.
Thank you for listening in and watching the Bedouin Banter.
Cue the outro music.
This has been Bedouins Up Close with Mike Donovan. We're back into a new series, interview style. Mike, thank you for being on the show, buddy.
Have a blessed year. Happy Ramadan. It's coming up. Alhamdulillah. And yeah. Catch you on the flip side, internet.
See you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, guys, it really makes a huge difference when you comment or you share. So make sure to do that and subscribe. Hit the little bell notification button.
Share, subscribe.
Everything that goes with it, guys. We'll be back this week, maybe with another episode as well. Just stay tuned to the Instagram. That's Bedouin Banter on Instagram. And my own. Mike, do you want to plug your own Instagram?
Yeah, at Dike Monovan. That's Dike, like the women. Monovan. It's a spoonerism of my name, Mike Donovan. Slide in my DMs or don't. You know who you are. And yeah.
There you go. Okay. So you guys don't forget, like I said, everything else. And we'll be back with the regular series by next week. If I can get another interview as well, we'll do another one of the Bedouins Up Close or another ranter. We'll talk. And then probably another episode this week as well. Find out. Stay tuned. See you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.